I am Nick Howe. Hello, everyone. Hello. I'm from Area9. We're at booth J40, which, in case you don't know where that is there. Big red thing. That's us right there. So you don't have very far to go. Oh, it's okay. We're good. I think they're having some problems with the volume, so I'll tone it down a little bit. I think that's it. We're going to talk about AI. So I hope you all brought your laptops, because we're going to be doing some JavaScript and some C++ and firing up the PyTorch libraries. No, you don't want to do any of that stuff. What we're going to talk about is how we can hide AI in the background, but create truly personalized learning at scale, and why that's important. Unfortunately, I like to normally wander around while I talk, but as you heard, there's massive feedback, and I'm kind of pinned over here, so apologies, I'll stick here. We're going to start with a little quiz around the sensors. How many sensors are there? This is the audience participation point. Anybody want to give me a number? How many sensors? Smell, touch, 5, 6, 6. Any advance on 6, 5? Come on, front row people. How many? 5? 5? All right. If I told you there were 13 or 14, would you believe me? So there's the 5 that most people think of. But touch is actually what they call a somatic sense, which is actually made up of different sensors. Believe it or not, we have different sensors for heat and cold. It's not just one. And then there's a whole bunch of things called the interoceptive sensors, which most people haven't heard of, but you know they are, because it's things like balance. And there's also the proprioceptive sense, which is how you know where your arms are. So this is an example of something called unconscious incompetence. When you think you know something, but in fact you don't. Right? And it's something that affects everybody in every walk of life. But it's one of the things that we don't necessarily think about when we are trying to teach, and particularly when we're trying to teach online. So there's a big question about, are you in fact consciously competent? When we develop people, we often think about it on this axis, from incompetence to competence. We want to teach you things you don't know. But in fact, there's another dimension. There's unconscious and conscious. Because there are some things we know. There are some things we know we don't know. But then there's all that other unconscious stuff. And so when it comes to training, and we're getting towards the AI bit, when it comes to training, we often focus on the bottom right-hand corner, that there are some things that people know they don't know, and we just need to fill in the gaps. But what about all that stuff on top that they already know? If we put them through that training, we're just wasting their time. And we often don't address the things in the bottom left corner where people don't even realize it's a blind spot for them. And so the goal of training should be to raise competence, but it should also be to address this issue of unconscious versus conscious knowledge. Now the question is, how do you do that, and how do you do... Oh, people taking photographs. There you go, I'll go back. The question is, how do you do that, and how do you do that at scale, and what role can AI play in that? And so the first question we're going to address is, why should we even personalize? So this is some real data that I'm going to show you from salespeople, and that big green blob there is actually made up of about 317 lines. And this is, we rolled out some personalized training that was assessing, as part of the training, how well they knew something. And so across that range of 300 people, some people did really well. They already knew an awful lot of the content. Some people not so much, and it's the classic S-curve. And I would argue that anything that you are trying to teach, whether it's leadership development, sales training, or how to repair an engine, and whether it's knowledge or skill, most people will know something about most things. And so if you can avoid teaching this, that can be a huge time saving. But you can see it's different for every single person. So how can we adjust to meet the needs of everyone? Secondly, and I apologize, that's a little bit light, there are things they know but they're just not sure about. Now we want to separate out where people think they're guessing the answer to something, but we do want to reinforce where someone knows something or can do something but maybe isn't as sure, because they're much more likely to transfer it into the workplace if they're confident in their ability to do something. The things in yellow, and remember this is real data, the things in yellow are where the system identified that people didn't know things. They admitted that they didn't know it. So this is the classic focus of learning, and you'll see this is on a percentage scale. There's not a lot here. So in this particular scenario, if we were taking a traditional teaching approach, then we're really only focusing on that little bit. The thing that frightened the life out of me, because this was my audience, was that big block in red. And that's where people said they knew something when in fact they didn't. And we see this in every single domain. We see it with salespeople, we see it with pilots, we see it with doctors. We train over 10,000 doctors a year, and I will tell you the average level of what we call unconscious incompetence is 18%. So in other words, 1 in 5 things that most doctors think they know, they in fact don't. Because it's out of date, something has changed, something's moved on, it's the way it used to be. So always get a second opinion if you go and see your doctor, because you never know whether in fact they're giving you, and apologies to any doctors in the audience, but this is hard data, you can't argue with the data. So this is why you will see every single line on this chart is different, and this is only 300 people. Imagine we're rolling out training to 10,000 people. Every single line is going to be different. So how do we optimize the education in a world where everyone is unique? So instead of doing what a traditional course will do, which is gives everybody exactly the same content at exactly the same pace, what we need to do is create unique experiences, but at a very granular level. This isn't simply, do I need to take this course or not? This is, as I study to learn how to do something, can I optimize the paths for different people in such a way that they only get what they want? And the only way to do that at scale is with AI and automation. And so I would argue that if you are building online learning with traditional types of development tools, and I'm not going to name them, but we've got a hall full of them here, you are doing a disservice to your learners because you are not taking account of that. You are treating everybody as though their line on that diagram was exactly the same as everybody else's line. And the data absolutely says that everybody's line is different. And so what we want to do is create a personalized path for every single individual. But we don't want to make that an absolute pain to develop. So the goal is to use software and to use artificial intelligence to create this level of adaptivity without increasing the cost of developing it in the first place. And so that's where the AI comes in. For the first time in human history, we have the ability, using technology, to adapt to meet the needs of every single individual. And that doesn't matter whether it's a kid at school or a 30-year doctor who is going to be board certified. The algorithms are now sufficiently robust, and there is enough evidence that we know that these types of techniques using AI can create truly adaptive experiences for anybody in any domain. So I'm not talking research projects here, I'm not talking something that's brand new. I'm talking technology and procedures and processes certainly in terms of cognitive science that have been developed over at least 30 years, and in terms of computer science that have been developed over the last 10 years. Now, there have been some recent developments that have dramatically brought down the cost of doing this and made it much more simple. But the goal is to create an optimized experience to help you learn. Now, the beauty of the approach that we take is that the AI and the automation is completely transparent to you, both to a learner and to a developer. You should not, unless you really want to, have to program to create adaptive experience for your learners. If you are doing that, then I hope you're in a university doing a research project. Because if you're in a corporation doing that, you're wasting your time. You don't need to do that. Simply by defining a series of learning objectives, mapping those learning objectives to the content that you would normally use in an e-learning program, whether that's video or microlearning or animations or text, whatever that happens to be, and then pairing that with some kind of question or problem that lets you determine how would you know if someone was proficient. Because theoretically we're rolling out all these programs because we want people to develop something. And most learning today is fire and forget. Right? We send it out into the ether and we hope that people learn stuff, maybe. Now you might throw a little quiz in there, but that's probably going to tell you that they learned something 10 seconds ago and they've now forgotten it the instant they get to the end of the quiz. But if you want truly robust learning that is going to stick, then you need to create a level of granularity which is going to adjust to meet the needs of every individual. Now the beauty is, all of the adaptivity is taken care of by the software. So I can build online courses essentially the way that I've always been building them. I map my learning objectives, I create some content, I develop some questions, and I publish a SCORM course and I'm good to go. When the learner launches the course, that's when the adaptivity happens. And so it doesn't matter whether it's on the desktop or the tablet or the phone, that single course adjusts to meet the needs of the individual. So as the person interacts with it, the system is capturing those interactions and feeding those through to a series of algorithms. And the algorithms are playing the role that a human tutor would play, trying to figure out what do you know and what don't you know? Are you finding this easy or are you struggling? Do I need to speed up? Do I need to slow down? Do we need to go back and cover something that we've already covered? So instead of in a traditional e-learning course, it is simply sequential. We're going to show you the content in the sequence the developer came up with and hope that somehow that sticks. Instead, we're handing over control to the underlying AI. And it's going to navigate through the content based on how you are interacting with it in such a way that we can optimize your path to mastery. And that is completely transparent. You don't need to write a single line of code in order for that to do. The learner's path through the system is an emergent property of their interactions. So it doesn't matter whether I'm a novice and I've never seen any of this content before, the system is going to take its time and help you learn those things. If I am the company expert on this subject, then as long as I demonstrate my proficiency, the system is going to get me out of there as quickly as I possibly can. And we typically see time differences of about 4 to 1. So, the majority of the people who take an adaptive learning experience using this approach will learn twice as fast as either in an equivalent classroom experience or through a traditional online learning program. The best people will go through half as fast again. The worst people will typically take twice as long, so about the time they would normally take to complete kind of a 1-hour e-learning program, for example. Except during that time, the system has been helping them learn and has been reinforcing that learning so that by the time they get to it, everybody has reached an equivalent level of proficiency. And all of that adaptivity happens automatically. From an authoring point of view, we've done a ton of work in the background that also leverages AI, but in a very different way. So I mean, you'll hear a lot of companies talk about AI, but it is a very big subject that covers many different areas. So for example, we use AI curation tools, so we can ingest content, we can automatically parse content with a view to reducing the amount of time you have to spend developing content. We use AI for text-to-speech to create automatic voiceovers, so you don't need to spend money recording voiceovers. Computer voice now has got to the point where it's nearly indistinguishable from voice talent, except in very rare circumstances. So we're looking to embody AI to create a personalized experience for the learner, because first and foremost, we want to make sure that we're creating the best possible outcomes. But we also want to drive down the cost of development. As it stands today, it's about on par with non-adaptive development. So you can create truly personalized adaptive experiences for the same development effort that it would take to create non-adaptive. But as these technologies continue to improve and the AIs get more finely tuned, we think we can drive down content curation costs by about a factor of 10. And at that point, it kind of becomes a no-brainer. Right? Why would you not create personalized experiences? And I would argue you're going to do a disservice to the L&D function and especially to your learners if you're not doing that. So if you'd like to learn more about what we do and how we do it, this is a big subject. The basic approach is very simple, but as always, the devil is in the detail. We're at that stand over there, Area9 Learning, Area9 Lyceum, I beg your pardon, we renamed the company. So just to summarize, why adaptive? Proficiency. By taking a personalized adaptive approach, you will raise the level of proficiency among your learners compared to other training. I'm not talking about from where they start to where they finish. Compared to other training, typically between 10 and 40%. You will reduce their time to competence by typically of the order of 50%. And you will improve engagement. Because the way that adaptive learning works is inherently interactive. We're going to use problems and you're going to interact and provide feedback. And people find that a very natural way to learn. They like to interact. They feel like the system is paying attention to them. That's just a natural consequence of the way the adaptive algorithms work. So if you are spending time in Storyline or other tools today, adding in interactivity to make your courseware less boring, I would argue you would better spend your time creating adaptive solutions, because those interactions are simply, putting lipstick on the pig. You're taking a bad experience and trying to make it better. Why not start out with a good experience that's highly engaging and put your effort into focus on the content and the outcomes that are truly going to make a difference to the learner? With that, I thank you for your attention, and I will ask, are there any questions? I've stunned you into submission. So I expect you all to get up and walk over there about 10 feet and hound all my colleagues and ask lots and lots of interesting questions. I will be around for the rest of the day. I was a customer of this company. So the data that I showed earlier was real data from my learners. So I spent 3.5 years deploying this. So this was live in the company that I was in, Hitachi, globally, 6 years ago. So this is not brand new stuff that's just new to the market, right? This is robust, well-tested technology. We've had something like 15 million learners use this approach to personalize. I say everything from doctors to salespeople. We've used it for leadership development. There are some limitations. I'm not saying this is a panacea. This is not going to replace all classroom training. I am not suggesting that you shouldn't have group interaction. And in fact, the best use of this is in a blended environment where you're pairing the best of the classroom with the best of personalization. And you can either use the personalization to reinforce things that you're teaching in the classroom, or you could use it as pre-work leading into the classroom. Because one of the things that I would love to know as an instructor, right? So I'm speaking to all of you now. I have no idea how much you already know about this. I have to teach you this stuff in a completely non-personalized way. Wouldn't it be great if I could see exactly how you'd all performed on some kind of initial introduction to adaptive learning? That I could see the concepts that you'd struggled with and the things that you'd found easy. I could have adjusted this presentation to better meet the needs even of the group. So even in group scenarios, that personalized approach can create additional value. So as you begin to deploy this, you can kind of go up a maturity curve where you are maybe deploying a single adaptive course just as a SCORM object into your LMS that sits alongside all your other non-adaptive courses. And then I can maybe start gathering that data from the system and saying, how can I improve the quality of that course so it better meets the needs of my learners? Then what does this mean for how I'm thinking about my learning strategy? And can I start to repurpose maybe some of my multi-day classroom programs and break them apart? I mean, we've been talking about blended learning forever, but now instead of simply saying, I'm going to take that knowledge component and dump it into a course, and now people can't even ask questions, I can create an adaptive experience that's really going to help people learn, and then I can reserve my classroom time for that truly group interaction where I'm going to add a more value as a human instructor. And then you can kind of go on from there. You can talk about refresh. So as you interact with the AI, it's capturing information about how you learned. So it knows the things that you struggled with, and it knows the things you found easy. And so it can automatically suggest in a week's time, hey, spend 5 minutes refreshing yourself because we predict you've forgotten some of the key things that you studied a week ago. Again, nothing you need to do as a developer. That's just something you get for free out of the way that the AI is working. So lots and lots of things to think about. I'm still learning after 6 years. I hope you find this useful. Hope to see you later this afternoon. I'm Nick Howe. Thank you for listening.